Welcome back to The Wrap, everyone. It's just Mark Ennis with me this week. Louis Rabeau taking the week off. We will start with Kentucky, who, Mark, this was a kind of a bubble battle of a game between them and Florida. Similar teams resume-wise who can't really afford any key losses down the stretch here. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that Kentucky was going to win a game where Oscar Tshiebwe had 4 points and fouled out, I would have been like, there's no way that is happening because they weren't getting enough from everybody else. Cason Wallace had 20. Jacob Toppin, 17. C.J. Frederick chipped in with 12. I feel like this was a kind of the win that UK really needed to prove that they can win a game without Oscar putting up a monster stat line.
You might even go a step further and say that it seems like there has been more of an emphasis to get non-Oscar more involved,
yeah,
and to get a larger percentage of like winning effort from people that are not Oscar. That maybe Cal is working towards the best version of this team isn't so Oscar dependent.
Yeah,
and I think he's probably onto something, especially as teams continue to try and isolate him as who they go after and who they target on defense. I think to the extent that they can maybe lessen their dependence on him, maybe even minutes-wise, to avoid that very thing, they might be working more towards that. And at least in terms of production, yeah, I think there's something to be said for, hey, we were able to overcome what we've been used to getting from other people. And there's been more of that in the second half of the season. So it's encouraging, I would think.
I like what Jacob Toppin has done with his game ever since the Louisville game we've talked about, in that he is relentlessly attacking the rim. He takes a jumper here and there when he gets it, but that guy is too athletic of a specimen to not be good around the basket. And I think it's changed his whole game when he's set his mindset to that.
Yeah, and I think it's always nice to get a good reminder that for as much as certainly the NBA and increasingly college basketball has become not really much of a post game, and lots of three-pointers, that there's still a place for a crazy athletic guy who can get the ball kind of near the rim and put it in the rim.
Yeah.
And that's what Toppin is. And also, I do think it's good for Kentucky to have a game where it's very clear that the opponent is executing what now seems to be the book on Kentucky. Let's do pick and roll and make Oscar Tshiebwe have to move and have to defend. And it's not just as simple as we'll roll it out there and we'll win. That, yeah, look, Florida had some success with it. They clearly tried to win that way, and it wasn't enough. And it's probably a good thing for Kentucky to survive somebody really trying to capitalize on that and it not working.
And I thought it was important that Cason Wallace really led the way in scoring 20 points, because out of anybody on Kentucky's roster, he is the guy who anybody in the NBA looks at and says, hey, that guy is something we can build around, because he's a tenacious defender. He's a better shooter than he's given credit for. And you have seen the transition from giving the keys to Severe Wheeler to be the main point guard to now really giving it to Cason Wallace. As long as he stays healthy, we know he's dealt with the back stuff, but he is a lot of fun to watch when he's on for this team. But for now, if Kentucky, they know they're going to get some big games out of Oscar, but to get a result like that with him on the bench and really not scoring a ton was big for them. Louisville was close to a big win, a big comeback. They were down by 17 to Florida State and come back to just lose by 3. And we've had this conversation before about how much credit do you want to give for showing quote-unquote fight when you were down by 17. But I believe this game, if you want to give credit for that, this one felt like it warranted that more than some of the other efforts we've talked about this season.
Yeah, because I think the reason that it felt like it is, I never felt like even as Florida State ran up that lead, that it was because Louisville was loafing. I thought Florida State was shooting the ball, better than they typically do, and I thought they were playing well. I thought Louisville was really loose with the ball, but it just didn't feel like they just sort of sagged and Florida State ran this lead up. So they never really seemed to stop fighting. It just, I think they were way more efficient in the second half. They fought through it, and that they need way more of this. This is, I think, the problem. These are the signs, the little heartbeats, the little shoots of things that we really needed to be seeing in late November and in December. We're way behind. That's encouraging. I think the question is, how did we get this far behind?
Well, exactly. And the defensive intensity was something that just wavered, because the reason Florida State was able to get up by 17 is because I don't think Louisville was doing a great job on defense. Florida State had open corner threes. They were able to drive the lane. They were able to beat UofL back down the court and get dunks. Florida State went scoreless for, I think, almost like a 5-minute stretch late in the second half, and you saw it crank up for Louisville. And I think that's the frustrating thing for Cardinal fans, because Kenny's preached about it before, that this team's got to be built on defense. They'll show it for you in a stretch, but you can't let it get to a point where it's like, okay, now we have to do it because we're down by so much.
Yeah, and I do wonder if we'll get to maybe the end of the year and so much of the or what percentage of the offense's issues are at least made far worse by the pressure that Louisville's really poor defense puts on it.
Yeah.
You know, there are no games that they can really weather just your standard kind of off shooting night, because they just don't stop folks. And I'd have to say, of all the things that have surprised me the most about this team, it's the defense. It's the way that they defend, the intensity with which they defend, and do it consistently. I thought they would just almost automatically be better, and they haven't been. And that's the biggest disappointment, because that's the one that's least talent dependent.
Louisville women got a huge win over North Carolina. We talked about defensive intensity. Man, Cardinals brought it on that end of the floor to beat the Tar Heels, and to break that game down, we'll bring in Chrissy Banta and Alexis Cubit. So here they are now, Alexis Cubit from the Courier-Journal and Chrissy Banta from ESPN Louisville. This was a huge win, I think, for Louisville this season. The second big win over a ranked opponent in ACC play. They beat Florida State. They come back and beat number 11 North Carolina 62-55, and this was an absolute slugfest to me. Neither team shot the ball well. UNC shot 33%, Louisville at 34%, and if there was a game for Mikasa Robinson to make the biggest impact possible, I think it was really fitting it was this one. She was outstanding in this ball game.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's the thing, though, is so much emphasis, I feel like, is put on points, but she does everything else. You know, she had 8 rebounds today. She was, drew, I think it was 2 offensive fouls on North Carolina in a span of, during that 8-minute stretch in the third quarter. So just the little things that, may not readily get noticed, but that can kind of help the team create that momentum to get those points. She's so big on that.
Yeah, and speaking of her doing things that, don't show up on a stat line, she's always the one who's out there getting the pass that gets the pass, that gets the shot.
Yeah.
And she did a lot of that today, continually, consistently. She just had an outstanding performance. And on top of that, this game, as you said, neither team was shooting great.
No, it was ugly.
It was defense that won this game, and I think the defensive performance today from Louisville was top-notch.
It was almost like Mikasa Robinson single-handedly flipped another energy switch in the Yum Center
She
with
found
what she was doing. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it was like she dug deep and found like an extra 1%
Yep.
within her, and it really just brought the rest of the team up to another level for the rest of the game.
And the other side to that is you are now seeing her bring the ball up a lot. And you're kind of talking about like the hockey assists in a way, like the first pass in a string of passes.
Yeah.
And I think she's really become their most trusted ball handler, or somebody to run the offense, because Haley and Cece are great scorers, but I don't think either one of them is a true point guard. But Mikasa Robinson is probably the best passer and the smartest player and the best defender that Louisville has, so it makes sense.
Well, I think when you think about a point guard, right, the point guard is supposed to be the leader. The point guard is supposed to be the one that dictates the pace of the offense, the one who can see the court well, find that open person. And the thing is, she's a leader.
She uses her experience to her advantage more times than not. And oftentimes you can see her, even if she's not on the court leading the team, running that point, you can see her over on the bench coaching those players up and getting their effort levels up. And I wouldn't be surprised to see her in some sort of coaching role after she's finished with school.
We've talked a lot about grit and toughness as something being maybe at times missing from this group that you've become accustomed to with Louisville women's basketball. And it seems sort of fitting that one of the biggest wins of the year is due to those two things in this game. Like, I know CeCe Carr shot the ball well. Haley hit some big shots. They both ended up with 17, but I look at the box score and see 12 rebounds from Nyla Harris and be like, that's as big of a reason they won as anything. Mikasa Robinson, all the other stats we mentioned, she drew 7 total fouls, whether that was getting a steal and moving in transition and going 5 of 6 at the line. Morgan Jones didn't have her best scoring game, but I thought she was fantastic on the backboard, using her length and athleticism to make a difference. These are the little things that I think have to add up together for them to really reach the potential.
Because let's be honest, this is when they are playing at their best. With the talent level this team has, this is another Final Four team. And some people might disagree with that just because of what's been shown, and that's fair. But again, when you look at pound for pound, the talent that they have, this is a team that when they are clicking on all cylinders, I really think could do some big things.
They have not been consistent with that talent, and that's why we're now having conversations of, are they going to be a 7, 8, 9 seed in the tournament?
Yeah.
That is not a conversation that we should be having.
So the conversation that piggybacks off that is that we've now seen the same starting five in back-to-back games that is nowhere near the starting five we saw at the beginning of the
Not
season.
even close.
Right.
Defensive buy-in, though, it seems like with that starting five to start a game seems to be high, and then everybody kind of picks up from there. So are you able to keep rolling like this and maybe see some synergy created by this change that we've seen recently?
Yeah, I feel like you have to. I mean, it's like, I can't remember who asked the question during post-game, but, they asked if, what Cece thinks about coming off the bench. And Jeff was like, well, it's either that or you don't play. And she wants to play. So I think the biggest thing is just buy-in. Like they know what this program is expected, and they know the tradition and standard of this, and that, quite honestly, has not been met this year. And that has to play on them, So now when you're saying, well, we may not win the ACC, but there's still the ACC tournament, there's still the postseason. We need to do whatever it takes to maintain that level and that standard that we've had.
And it's a change of expectation, I think, on our end for what certain pieces would bring. Because coming into the season, I thought Morgan Jones would be your number 2 scorer in most scenarios.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think the biggest impact she can make, now look, if she wants to go out there and drop 20 to 25, I'm sure
can.
Jeff's going to be like,
I'm
oh
not
my
gonna be
gosh,
mad.
stop.
Absolutely.
Please
Please
don't
do.
do that.
Right.
But the biggest impact I think she can make is using her athleticism and her length as a defender, as a rebounder.
Morgan has been an interesting one this year.
She's
I
playing
feel
well.
like, and she's not playing badly.
No, not by any means.
I
no.
think that you and I had the same expectation, and you probably as well had the same expectation with her coming in that she was going to be a scorer. And I think she had that expectation of herself as well. And she's had to learn this new role of doing all of the other small things to help her team.
At the beginning of the year, I thought there might have been a shot that Nyla Harris worked her way into the starting lineup. I didn't know how possible that could be, but I did not expect her first 2 starts to go this well. Whether it was the scoring against Syracuse or the performance on the glass against North Carolina, she has a natural knack for finishing around the rim, and not only that, she's tough, she's physical. It seems like she has understood what her role is from day one and is getting rewarded for that now.
Yeah, I think you can definitely see her being one of those young leaders next year, for the incomers, or just have that higher expectation as a sophomore, which, sometimes it might seem unfair just because, she's still young, there's still that learning curve.
Sure.
Yeah.
But when you're really talented like that, I mean, the standards rise, but I think she's one that will, just based on what she's done this season, I think she'll rise to the occasion. But yeah, no, I think we're in the beginning stage of seeing some really good things from her for sure.
Yep. So big win for Louisville. As we talked about the seeding moving forward, I think this will be one. If they can move up a seed line or 2, they will go back to, okay, you beat North Carolina, you beat Florida State, you beat Texas towards the beginning of the season. But the good news is for this team is they will have more opportunities. But can you put together the defensive intensity consistently and get a little bit more offense to do so? We'll see down the stretch. For now, Alexis, Cubit, Chrissy, Banta, I'm Tyler Greever. Thanks for watching The Wrap.